This plume of smoke is rising from a town in Syria. A similar scene unfolded in another town about 100 kilometers away. These attacks were the result of Turkish airstrikes on October 9th, 2019, when Turkey's invasion of northern Syria began.
The long-planned Turkish military operation in northeast Syria has been launched.
Turkey pushing ever deeper into Syria.
At least 160,000 civilians are believed to have fled the fighting in the border area.
Over the next several days, the Turkish military moved further into Syria and attacked several other towns. All of these attacks are concentrated here on this strip of land in northeast Syria. It's part of an area that Turkey has been wanting to turn into a so-called safe zone for years.
Ve orada bir güvenli bölge oluşturulması.
Suriye'de bir güvenli bölge oluşturulması. Hedef burada bir terörden arındırılmış güvenli bölgedir.
So what is this safe zone and what purpose does it really serve for Turkey? Syria descended into armed conflict in 2011. Protests broke out against the country's authoritarian government in major cities. When the government turned its attention to the uprisings and violently cracked down, it left a power vacuum in the north. That's where the jihadist militant group ISIS swept in starting in 2013. Significant portions of this region, which was home to Syria's largest ethnic minority group called the Kurds, were eventually conquered by ISIS. But Kurdish militias successfully fought back. So the US backed them with air support and on-the-ground training against ISIS. In 2015, Kurdish and non-Kurdish militias in the region banded together to form the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, and started pushing ISIS back. This paved the way for the expansion of a Kurdish-led territory which was already being established here. By 2019, the SDF effectively broke the ISIS stronghold in the north. They set up prisons that held around 11,000 captive ISIS fighters and housed tens of thousands of ISIS family members in displacement camps. US military bases also cropped up in this Kurdish-run area, and US troops began patrolling the Syrian-Turkish border. Across the border in Turkey, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has long viewed the rise of the Kurds in Syria as a threat. That's because a Kurdish separatist group in Turkey called the PKK has fought the Turkish government for decades. The PKK has pushed for greater autonomy for Kurds living in Turkey, but the Turkish government has rejected their autonomy and fought back. The violent conflict between the two has left tens of thousands dead. Erdogan claims the PKK is aligned with Kurdish forces in Syria, and he sees their growing influence across the border as a risk. A Kurdish-governed territory in Syria could inspire Kurds in Turkey to import the same model back home.
Türkiye olarak biz sınırlarımızda böyle bir gayrimeşru oluşumun asla yani türbünden izleyicisi olmayacağız.
Erdogan has launched attacks on Kurds in Syria multiple times. The first came in 2016 when Turkish troops attacked here in the northwest to push back ISIS and block Kurdish expansion along the border. And in 2018, they attacked Syria again, this time in an attempt to wipe out the SDF. Turkey gained control over these areas, but by this time, it was facing problems within its borders. A trade war with the US and economic mismanagement by the country's leaders had caused Turkey's economy to crash, and many found themselves unable to find work as unemployment increased. This economic downturn caused many in Turkey to look for a scapegoat in Syrian refugees. The war in Syria forced over 6 million to flee the country, and 3.6 million of those refugees fled to Turkey. more than any other nation. As Turkey's economy slumped, more and more Turks disapproved of President Erdogan and resented the influx of refugees. In 2014, Erdogan's Justice and Development Party had broad support. It won 50 mayoral seats, more than half the country's local leadership. But in March 2019, his party lost 11 of those seats in local elections. To make matters worse, a pro-Kurdish party, the People's Democratic Party, won 8 mayoral seats and helped other opposition candidates win across the country.
Voters delivered the Turkish president his worst night ever at the ballot box.
This is all reflecting some major discomfort with the president.
The Kurds have become the key in this result.
To regain political popularity, the pressure was on Erdogan to act. After the elections, he doubled down on an idea he'd been proposing for years, a safe zone between Turkey and Syria. Erdogan had already taken control of this region in northwest Syria. Now he wanted to expand that territory to the east, further into Kurdish-led land.
Bu koridoru tümüyle ortadan kaldırana kadar bu süreci devam ettirdik.
Erdogan claimed that the purpose of this safe zone would be to move Syrian refugees back into this strip of Syria. He took this plan to Russia and the US, but he couldn't get them on board. With political pressure mounting at home, Erdogan and his government threatened to move into Syria on their own.
Arzumuz bir an önce bu güvenli bölge konusunda bir mutabakata varıp uygulamaya geçmek. Aksi takdirde biz Türkiye olarak gereğini kendimiz yapacağız.
But there was an obstacle in their way. The US, an ally to Turkey and a military supporter of the Kurds, still had troops stationed in northern Syria, so Turkey couldn't make its move. In August 2019, Turkey made some progress with the US. The two agreed to a safe zone that they would patrol together. This zone would extend 5 kilometers into northern Syria. The SDF cooperated by withdrawing some of their forces. But this agreement wasn't enough for Erdogan. At the UN a month later, he proposed a much larger zone.
We intend to establish a peace corridor with a depth of 30 kilometers and a length of 480 kilometers in Syria and enable the settlement of 2 million Syrians there.
Soon after this address, Turkey found a way into Syria. After a phone call with Erdogan, President Donald Trump ordered the withdrawal of US troops from northern Syria.
It's now time to bring our soldiers home.
I don't want to leave troops there. It's very dangerous for them. We never agreed to protect the Kurds for the rest of their lives.
Trump broke the US alliance with the Kurds and pulled troops from along the border. Erdogan finally seized his opportunity and sent troops into northeastern Syria. Turkey's invasion has been brutal and destabilizing.
What's happening in Syria can only be described as chaos.
Kurdish hospitals have been overwhelmed. Thousands are still on the move, trying to escape this violence.
Families desperate to get out of here.
Turkey is sending in Arab militias that would displace the Kurds from their homes.
As the SDF defends itself against Turkish forces, they're leaving ISIS prisons unguarded. And according to Kurdish sources, hundreds have already escaped. The US withdrawal and Turkey's invasion have created a new power vacuum in northern Syria, one that's quickly being filled.
As the US leaves, another force rolls in.
The Kurds have made a deal with Syria's president.
Turkey's president and Russian President Vladimir Putin making a deal about the future of Syria.
Withdrawal of US troops is leading to more change than the area has seen in years.
야 나와라.
못 나가.
아 그러니까.
못 나간다고.
아 왜?
아직도 미끌거려. 아직도 미끌거리. 남자를 위해 피지, 채취, 미끌거림까지. 싹.
Kurds are seen as the world's largest ethnic group without a home country of their own.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to our class. And I have to make sure that we have enough time for a debate because Minju is going to debate me on our debate topic today. And let's remind ourselves what the debate topic is. And it is, to South Koreans today and in the future, liberal democratic political participation requires devolution of authority from the central government to regional and local government. And I will be con and Minju will be pro. And this is a class in which we're covering the regional policies of the European Union to encourage and promote the emergence of regional subnational authorities among the member states, first beginning in Western Europe, of course. In Western Europe, this was begun back in the middle of the 20th century, particularly to encourage the structuring of these regions so that the European Union could encourage poor areas, particularly poor areas of the then much smaller European community to develop more rapidly. Particularly the focus was on the on southern Italy, the Risorgimento it is called. The Risorgimento is the traditional name for Italy south of Rome. And maybe I can look that up here. I haven't looked this up before on no, not the Risorgimento, Mezzogiorno. Risorgimento is the Italian nationalist movement. Mezzogiorno is the name of the region in Italy. And this region in Italy is traditionally very poor. My family, my father comes from this area in Abruzzo's region. And the European Union began trying to develop, focusing particularly on this area of Italy to accelerate the pace of its economic development so that it would become more equal with the rest of developed Western Europe. And this was before, of course, Spain or Greece or Portugal joined or Ireland joined. But when this area was targeted for European Economic Community Development Funds, they were called cohesion funds. Namely, it promotes the cohesion, the tightness of the European community, a political commitment of the peoples of the European Union to the European community or the European Union today, through equalizing their economic, relatively speaking, reducing their economic differences in terms of the level of economic development. I mean, these people are quite poor. I mean, they're quite poor or were. And so that's why you often hear references in the chapter 17 to the cohesion policy, or throughout the entire book, to European Union cohesion policy. When you see that word cohesion, C-O-H-E-S-I-O-N, it's referring to the European Union structural funds to develop the regions of the poor regions of the European Union. And then this policy expanded to include, of course, other areas of the European Union, including, for example, Scotland and certain areas of Scotland, like in Glasgow, city of Glasgow in Scotland, used to have a reputation years ago as having Western Europe's largest slum ghetto area. This is back in the 1960s. So European Union cohesion and structural funds went to other areas like Scotland, and then of course when Ireland and also along with your United Kingdom and later Portugal and Greece and Spain joined, those cohesion funds expanded to these poor areas of the expanding European community, now European Union, through the 1980s. Of course, when the developed countries of Austria and Sweden and joined in the mid-1990s, the impact on them was much less because, of course, those were very economically developed states similar to Germany. So, they were not going to benefit much from the cohesion funds, of course. And the European Union's regional policies and the subnational authorities, as we've emphasized in the reading for this week, emerged originally around the need to develop regional structures for administering and implementing and monitoring these regional development policies, and also to some extent the agricultural policies, but particularly the regional policies. So you needed to have regional governments, regional authorities, along with national government authorities in Italy and Ireland and Spain and so on, in Greece. But you also needed regional authorities, regional governments within those states the claim was to more effectively implement and adopt to the needs and particular features of that particular region that's particularly poor in that member state. And so that was the framework for the development of the cohesion policy. Of course, when Spain was brought in the 1980s, there was, of course, a special situation then that became even more intense when the Eastern European countries entered the European Union. In Spain, you had strong regional national movements. We already covered that a number of times in the class with the Catalonia movement, Catalan nationalism, and the adaptation and implementation of European Union regional policies and regional frameworks was fit towards those pre-existing conditions of inter-ethnic conflict between the Catalan nationalists and the Spanish central government, as well as the Basque nationalists in Spain. So the European Union regional policy, which there's not a strong nationalist movement in southern Italy. In the Mezzogiorno, there's never been a Italian nationalist movement there, but when the European Union expanded into its new members in the 1980s and 1990s and then in the 2000s, then the European Union's existing regional policy infused into itself more of this ethnic conflict, this nationalist ethnic conflict, these identity conflicts that are causes of much conflict and violence. And war, for example, in the former Yugoslavia, when Yugoslavia disintegrated into inter-ethnic conflict between the Croats and the Serbs and the Bosnians. Not all Croats, not all Serbs and the Bosnians, but enough of those people were nationalistic that they could not tolerate living under each other's domination in a disintegrating Yugoslavia. So if there were lots of Serbs in Croatia, which there were, like, for example, when Croatia broke away from the Yugoslavia, 30% of the population of Croatia were ethnic Serbs because of how the borders had been drawn in the mid-1940s under the communist dictator Josip Broz Tito. They drew the borders in such a way so that 30% of people who are Serbs didn't live inside Serbia. They lived in Croatia, they lived in Bosnia, and they did not want to be under Croats, and they did not want to live under as Serbs under Bosniak Muslims. And so the European Union's regional policy has had to deal with these issues, and that is a strong change from the original intent of the regional policies of the European Union, which was focused more upon developing the economic needs of poor regions, not really dealing with ethnic conflicts, right? And trying to resolve ethnic conflicts and keep them peaceful and satisfy these identity demands of groups that are typically minorities or view themselves as oppressed minorities, oppressed by a bigger nation as they live in the same state. So, and so the European Union has been thrust into dealing with these challenges, particularly in dealing with the Central and Eastern European member states. And that's why you saw that the European Union has had to develop its human rights policies as a requirement for countries that desperately want to join the European Union, believing that joining the European Union will make them prosperous and peaceful, just like Western European countries like Germany and France and Italy. They have this dream to join the European Union, but they have this history of ethnic, territorial, nationalist conflict because these states, unlike France, for example, countries like I already mentioned the former Yugoslavia are multinational states. France is one nation. France is a nation state, right? Poland also is a nation state today after World War II and the genocidal murder the Kurds and the vast ethnic cleansing that happened among the ethnic populations to move populations. By the way, the biggest victim or target of ethnic cleansing so far in world history has been Germans. There were, estimates at least 12 million Germans. 12 million Germans were driven from Eastern Europe, including Russia and Yugoslavia and Romania and other regions, part of Poland, were driven out or fled in front of the advancing Soviet army as Germany under Hitler started losing the war and the Soviet army began advancing. The Germans, minorities living in those countries, were seen as complicit in the crimes of the German conquests of the German military. Whether or not they were is another question, but they were seen as a fifth column, traitors, representatives of the enemy that caused them so much suffering. So at least 12 million, up to 16 million Germans, we don't really know. It was just chaos at this time at the end of World War II, fled or were killed or expelled from Russia, what is today Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and Czechoslovakia, and so on. And so, so as a result, Poland is now a nation state. But at the time of when World War II began, one source I read said that stated that only 60% of Polish people living in what was then Poland in 1939 were actually ethnically Polish. So the other 40% were Germans, Jews, Lithuanians, Latvians, Estonians, Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, many, many different groups. Today, Poland is 95% Catholic Polish people because of murder, ethnic cleansing. So Poland is a nation state, but Romania, for example, has a large Hungarian minority living in Transylvania, in the center of Romania. A few million Hungarians live there, and they generally, if they had their wish, would rather be as part of Hungary than as part of Romania. But they're surrounded by Romanians, separating them from the state of Hungary. So, you know, as I said earlier, these regional policies of the European Union have been adapted and had to adapt to these different conditions in Eastern Europe, and after 1989, and the European Union had to emphasize the promotion and protection of human rights. That means particularly ethnic minority rights in these countries that have a bad history in terms of ethnic conflict within them. And that has often included an emphasis that there should be acknowledgement and recognition of these national minorities within these countries as ethnic identity groups that are open and able to express their culture as, like we talked about last class, Bulgarian Turks. They don't have the right to leave Bulgaria. They can't secede from Bulgaria and join neighboring Turkey on the borderlands between Bulgaria and Turkey, is where the Bulgarian Turks are concentrated. But they do have the right to go to school in their language, to take classes in their language, to have access to newspapers and television and radio in Turkish language. But they're not supposed to break away. And so, but in terms of the challenges of nationalism, there are thousands and thousands of different languages in the world. I see estimates between 3,000 to 5,000 different ethnic groups in the world. That's a number I've come across. Not all of those 3,000 to 5,000 ethnic groups are trying to create their own separate independent state that would become a member of the United Nations. No. So not all ethnic groups, even if they have resentments towards the majority, are seeking and fighting for an independent state, the way the Kurds are, for example, or the way the Basques did in Spain, until finally they stopped killing policemen. I think it was announced here, since I've been here in Korea, the Basques finally announced under the ETA that they are stopping their independence struggle. I think there should be an entry here in ETA in Wikipedia. No, disambiguation. Let's see if I disambiguation, and let's say the ETA is the Basque separatist movement or it was in Spain, and they announced that they are I thought it was, oh yeah, here it is, Basque separatist group. So they fought and they announced that they were, they announced the end of it. They ceased fire finally in 2018. And they killed, the number I've seen, 800 Spanish policemen since they started their struggle, in 1959, long before Francisco Franco died in Spain. And so they stopped their violent struggle. And again, to make this point, the respect and acknowledgement of Basque identity through giving the Basque country of Spain recognition as a region of Spain, not a separate country, but a regional government with autonomy, has to be part of any explanation as to why this violent separatist movement ended. And the European Union would have to get credit for that, just like the European Union would have to get credit for, or similar to how the European Union would get credit for the end of fighting in Northern Ireland. Not all of the credit, but any explanation as to how this was a successful case of violent, bloody, ethnic conflict ending has to include European integration, and that includes European regional policy and encouraging the central governments to acknowledge ethnic groups that have a strong sense of identity, but don't go too far and do not attempt to secede from Spain in the case of the Catalonian nationalists, right? We already covered how the European Union is refusing to allow Catalonia any further in this region to attempt to secede. And they've even sent one of their leaders of the recent effort to declare independence by this region, stripped of the European Parliament member of immunity, who fled from here to Belgium and then won election by the Catalans to the European Parliament, and the European Parliament stripped him of parliamentary immunity, and he might now go to jail. But you still have to acknowledge and recognize that these people, they cannot leave Spain and become an independent country and join the European Union, but they have to have identity acknowledgement, and they have to have a large degree of self-government. So that has been the challenge that the European Union faces. Remember, the European Union is supposed to be a peace strategy for Europe. And this problem in Spain is much greater, is in a sense, exponentially greater in Eastern Europe. We're seeing fighting in Ukraine, for example, fighting in Georgia, two former Soviet republics that have ethnic conflicts within them. And of course, we already talked about how these ethnic conflicts are encouraged often by neighboring countries who want to punish their neighbor by causing their neighbor trouble, by encouraging these militant guerrilla separatist movements by giving them weapons and economic aid and a sanctuary to use their home country on which they have a border as a base area to launch attacks into that country. And that's what's going on with the Kurds. So, and the reason we're talking about this here is because, the United States has been pushing the European Union to incorporate Turkey into the European Union. I mean, the Europeans, the French in particular, were always complaining. Also the British, before the British left the European Union, that they really wanted the European Union to expand, to bring in Turkey. Now that has stopped, but that was the complaint you often heard from Paris, that the Americans, if they want, they're so insistent upon helping their friend and ally Turkey to get in the European Union, we should pressure them. How would they feel about the Europeans pressuring the Americans to integrate Mexico more closely and more fully into American affairs? So that was the kind of language that I heard until several years ago. But then after Recep Tayyip Erdogan won election as president, and particularly 5 years ago when there was a coup attempt in Turkey, led by elements of the Turkish military who were suspect of Erdogan, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, as being too Islamist in his orientation, because the Turkish military is a strong supporter of the secular Turkish nationalism of the founder of modern Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who led the rebellion that overthrew the Treaty of Sèvres, which basically it was beginning to allow the Italians, the Greeks, the Russians, and the others to divide up what was left of the Ottoman Empire in during World War I. And And so, and this man, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is convinced that in this stereotyping that characterizes so much of the Middle East, that the Americans were somehow behind that coup attempt in 2016, 5 years ago. And they think that the Americans are keeping a cooperative Muslim cleric, Fethullah Gulen, who lives in Pennsylvania, and they think that this person is leading some kind of Muslim movement that's allied with the United States to overthrow Recep Tayyip Erdogan. So the Americans the Turks have been pressing this person because they think him and his followers tried to orchestrate the 2016 uprising that killed hundreds of people in Turkey, in which President Recep Tayyip Erdogan put down. And the Americans refused to hand him over. And since then, the ties between U.S. and therefore between between Turkey and U.S. and therefore between the European Union and Turkey have gotten worse and worse and worse. And it's escalated further, of course, with the disintegration of Syria in the civil war in Syria, and the greater success that the Kurds of Syria and Iraq have made with the tutelage and support of the United States military in battling America's adversaries in Baghdad and Damascus. Because as you might know, of course, during the Cold War, Baghdad was ruled by the Ba'ath Party, and so was also Syria, and Damascus was ruled by the Syrian branch of the Ba'ath Party, the Ba'ath Socialist Party, as it was called in both Iraq and Syria. And they were allied with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. They were secular Arab nationalists, and they were allied with the Soviet Union as the United States was allied with Israel and the traditional monarchical regimes in Jordan and in Saudi Arabia, the oil sheikdoms. And so any kind of effort to improve the conditions of the Kurds in Turkey for Turkey to someday join the European Union is going to have to include some degree of self-government for the Kurds of Turkey. That might have been possible 30 years ago. The Kurds might have accepted that. But 30 years ago is a long time ago. The Cold War has ended. Iraq has been de facto partitioned. The United States has a big military base in the Kurdish area of northern Iraq in Erbil. The United States has thousands of troops in Iraq. It has hundreds of troops still in Syria working with the Syrian Democratic Forces and the People's Protection Leagues that are the Kurdish units in northern Syria. And the Kurdish peoples of northern Syria have striven so much to convince the world that they should be supported because they support secular nationalism, women's rights, feminism, all of the good liberal values that nationalism can associate with. Because as we covered, right, nationalism can associate in particular context with liberal values, particularly if your main patron and supporter is the United States, which claims to be all about liberal democratic human rights, right? You have to talk. It helps if you talk in those terms to get American support. So, but the danger now is that when you grant this kind of autonomy, regional autonomy to these different countries, that it can make their appetite for independence even stronger as they come to see that, you know what, this might really be feasible. We're making progress. We're making progress to our dream of having our own sovereign independent state. And that's always a danger you face if you grant regional autonomy to a discontented minority regional group. And that's more likely now to encourage Kurdish nationalism, now that in effect, the Americans are supporting the Kurds in Syria and Iraq. And this goes back to, and so, by the way, you know, the Turk, Recep Tayyip Erdogan's secret police have assassinated Turkish Kurdish militants in Germany. It says, you know, that the Turkish secret police have been assassinating and attempting to kill Kurdish activists who are based in Germany, and they're not the only ones. I mean, the Iranians also in the 1990s. They sent agents, secret agents, to kill Iranian Kurdish activists, militants living and working in Germany. just to show you that, you know, the Kurds have this dream, and just to go, before we go to our debate here, I wanted to highlight again some discussion about nationalism, because we keep coming back to nationalism because it's so important to understand what is going on in these countries. That some nationalist movements historically have been so great in size and potential power that sooner or later they're going to succeed in establishing their own independent countries by breaking up empires and creating their own sovereign independent state for the nation. You know, in the Middle East, well, in Eastern Europe, you see, you know, Polish nationalism sooner or later is going to succeed, because in that regional context and the size of the Polish community, it was going to succeed. Hungarians, Romanians, you can say that this is necessarily going to happen. But then that's number one group, that they're so large, relatively powerful, they cannot be denied. Under number two category are groups that are intermediate range, that they will succeed in becoming independent sovereign states if the international political system supports them. And that means get strong support from a great power patron ally. And you see that, so those are secondary, those are borderline groups, right? And those include Serbs, Slovenes, Croats. Croats love Germany because Germany helps them. Serbs have been allied with Russia, and Russia's not very strong these days. And the Albanians in Kosovo have been allied also with the Americans against pro-Russia Serbia. Slovaks, and then under number three are those groups that have a strong sense of identity, but they're so small, and they know that they're so small that they don't strive for independent nation statehood, because they know they'll fail and they'll all be killed in the violent, bloody effort. And those include Macedonians and Bosnian Muslims. So they make all sorts of compromises, right? Like the Macedonians would be quite happy to keep NATO forces in Macedonia if that's the compromise they have to keep in order to make sure that Macedonia doesn't get divided again by the Bulgarians, the Albanians, the Greeks, and the Serbs, because there's only like 1.4 million Slavic Macedonians in that country of 2.2 million, right? So they make or the Bosnian Muslims, right? They'll accept, you know, like in Korea, right? And the American military soldiers are not under Korean law. So when those Korean soldiers killed when those American soldiers killed two Korean girls by hitting them with a truck, those American soldiers were not tried by Korean law because there's a status of forces agreement. So again, South Korea is also not a completely sovereign state, right? But that's a different situation because of the Korean War. But also in the Middle East, under number two, you have also, like number two here, you have under number two, these cases, Armenian nationalism. It will succeed if the outside world, if the outside great powers support it. And the Americans didn't do much, are not helping Armenia very much. The Armenians look to Russia, but Russia's weak. Jewish nationalism, Israel has been successful because of the American intense support. Because of America's support. It could not have succeeded without American support, Israel. And also the Kurds, they're in that category. And I got these notes from my mentor 30 years ago, and more than 30 years ago. And today it looks like the Kurds are making progress with the help of the Americans. And they know it, and I know it, and now you know it. And Erdogan knows it. And so a peace strategy of the European Union for Turkey to grant the Kurds of Turkey autonomy, it's less and less likely. And that means Turkey's probably never going to join the European Union, despite all of the pressures of 25 years ago, and Turkey's close alliance with NATO, and its important role for the United States. It doesn't appear, it appears less likely now than it did even 10 years ago. And the key here is Kurdish nationalism. Because you in the class, you don't think that Turkey's going to give up Kurdish territory. You know, you could imagine somehow they make a deal. They'd say to Turkey, Turkey, if you give up the western territory of Turkey, no, I'm sorry, the eastern territory of Turkey to a greater Kurdistan, formed out of Syria and Iraq and part of Iran, and then you, the western part of Turkey that is the most secularized, most pro-Western, you can join the European Union. Is that likely to happen? You, last class, voted no, it's not going to happen. And you're probably right. Because they made an offer like that basically to Serbia. Give up Kosovo, Serbia. Give it up, and we'll let you unify with the Serbian areas of Bosnia. And it didn't happen. So let's go now to our debate. And so let's see if I can go there. And okay, so Minju Jung. So who's going to keep time for us? Because I can't keep time because well, I could, but I shouldn't because I'm in the debate. So who would like to keep? Okay, good. So it's 6-6-4-7-3, 6 minutes for pro, then 6 minutes for con, then pro rebuts for 4 minutes, then con rebuts and concludes for up to 7 minutes, and then pro has the last word for 3 minutes. But I've spoken too long already, so I will limit my time. Okay, so Minju, do you have something? Do you have something to share? Something to share for the group?
And also,
yes. Can I screen share? Do I have the?
Yes. Oh, you have to screen share. Okay, I have to give you that. Okay, let me.
You have to open the setting.
Okay, so where's the screen share? Screen share. How do I screen share? Stop share. Okay, so just a second. Let me go back to close this, and go like this, and advanced sharing up. Yes, so multiple participants can share simultaneously. Okay, Chong Minju, you can share. You can now screen share.
And we also need to do the attendance.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Wait. While you're getting set up, let's do the attendance. Thank you. I knew I was going to forget it. I knew it when I started talking. I said I should do attendance, but then I get all excited and then I forget to do it. So let's go to Cyber Campus and log in and go here and go to the course and go to attendance and week 13 add and smart attendance and the let me see screen share, and we go here and the number is start attendance. The number is 648. 648 is the screen share number, 648. And so we go back up to the screen here. I want to go to 648, and I want to go to back to the Zoom. Stop share. I guess I just do it the hard way. Okay, 648 is the number, 648. And you know what else I forgot to do? I forgot to set up a survey on who won the debate. Vote who won the debate. So add, who won the debate today? And that today is 21-5-28. Minjung pro or con? Pro or con? And Minjung Ju is I think it's Minjung Ju. I can't remember. And then and Bendy Dominichez is con. And so I will do this now. And publishing date, I'm gonna go to due date, also the same day, and we'll get it done by 12 o'clock, and like that, and go pro, con, neutral cannot decide, and then save, and then we go. Let's do another one. And then I have to 21-5-28 grade the debate. Forgot to do this. I knew it today. And we'll also make that 12 o'clock. You'll make it okay. And do today. And anonymous, yes. General vote. A plus, A, B plus, B, C plus, C, D plus, D, and F. And it's anonymous. Okay. So, Minjung, are you ready to go? Chong Minju, are you ready to go?
Yes,
okay.
I just screen share.
Okay, go ahead.
Is my screen?
Yes.
Fine, okay. Hi, I'm Minju Jung, major international studies, and I will be explaining why I agree with the statement. So so the reason why I agree with the statement was because I thought that devolution is required as it is a process where everybody, even the minorities, can have the opportunity to participate in politics and express their thoughts and their ideas regarding political issues. And before getting into more details, I believe that it's important to point out the definitions because they do matter with my assertions. Okay, so as I said, devolution is one of the necessary process for liberal democracy to happen. And I believe that the reason why comes from the definition of those two words, liberal democracy and devolution. So first, what liberal democracy means is that it emphasizes the separation of powers and independence of every individuals and their freedom and their rights. Therefore, it means that it prioritizes the equity and whether they, and it doesn't matter what kind of political views or ideas they have, they are all supposed to be accepted and be listened to. So if liberal democracy is this, then I believe that devolution is one of the required process, because devolution is a process where transfer of powers from central government to subnational authorities. The purpose of devolution is known to be that it allows the people of it allows the not just the central people but also the local people and the minorities to have better freedom and also more flexibility and I guess participating in politics. So because the political system has been transferred down to the local governments, meaning that it allows it more efficient process of those local people to actually express what their ideas for the political issues. The best example for this situation is Scottish independence. So in 1979, which was the first referendum, but it was rejected for Scottish independence. It was rejected, but in 1997, again, they had established the second referendum for their independence. And this was successfully passed. And because the referendum was passed, the Parliament in London had to vote in favor of the referendum and allow the Scottish regional government to have their own parliament, and which allowed eventually for the Scottish people to express their political views more efficiently. This is because obviously they have their own political system closer to them, not just in London, which is really far, but they have their own government that allows them to that represents them directly. So due to these reasons, I believe that devolution has helped the people to participate better in politics and also liberal democracy to actually be in reality in more efficiently.
Okay, I'll make my statement. I won't use hardly any time. I mean, the point in the book and as emphasized in the book is that you can't make general statements about what is best in terms of liberal democracy and opportunities for participation in general regarding these different countries. And of course, I'm making this argument because I'm on the con side. So I've been appointed to this position, and so I'm arguing because I was assigned it. But if I want to share a screen, there's different conditions in different countries. There might be conditions in, for example, countries that are very centralized, like France. I mean, France is the homeland of popular participation and nationalism. Yet France is a very centralized state. I mean, they change the borders of their provinces. They appoint direct central governors are appointed by the central government in France. They're not elected to the provinces of France. They have provinces because they're just, you know, technical administrative functions. So you can't make general statements about what is necessary for popular political participation and development in Bulgaria or Italy or France or Scotland, because it depends upon their histories and the intensity of their various identity in-groups they have and their histories. Let's just say, you know, summarize by saying in terms of their histories of conflict. So you really can't make statements that what is necessary in one country in terms of decentralization is necessary in another. You can even make that point that the United States, for example, I know we're going outside of the European Union, but the United States is very decentralized, and that's very decentralized in part because of the history of slavery, that you had to enforce enslavement of people from Africa in early commodity-based capitalist trading, and that meant you had to have plantations in which you had local police forces to enforce enslavement of people. So you can say America likes to pretend it's very exceptional and wonderful and pro-democratic, but you know, the United States has more people in prison as a proportionate population of its population than any country in the world. The number that's often thrown around is this country that's highly decentralized, highly devolved with 50 states and local governments and city governments and a federal system. They've got 2.2 million people in prison. In China, the number was supposedly 800,000. Now that doesn't include the Uyghurs that have come into the news a few years ago, the million that might be in camps there. But I mean, just because you're decentralized doesn't mean that that the country is fully respecting human rights, right? So it depends on the conditions within the country, and those conditions frame attitudes, prevailing attitudes, and people's attitudes and change, like their values and motivations change. But you know, it might well be that, like in France, to be self-actualized, we love being in France, with Paris the capital of France, and we are in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I think it's too broad and general a statement. So what is your rebuttal, Pro?
So I would like to say that
you can share your screen.
No, I don't have a screen for this because I don't know what argument you're going to say. So I do agree that it might be too, I guess, general, and it's not, and probably for few countries where, like you said, depending on the conditions, like people and their identity, the devolution is not really one of the necessary process. But I believe that the board, I disagree with this part, because it's not that it's not that the regional governments and also the local governments exist because of the technical issues, but they exist to actually help the local who cannot I guess have the opportunity and to reach to the central government, and the regional governments are the actors that connects them to the central government, and at some point the regional government needs to have more powers to actually equalize the powers between the central government and the local government, because liberal democracy has one of the elements where a separation of power is one of the important is one of the emphasized elements to achieve liberal democracy. So by separating powers from the central government to regional government, everybody has the equality to actually express what they're thinking and have more efficiency in expressing and participating in politics. And I believe that it cannot be just the borders, the states between the borders cannot just be technical, and therefore I believe that devolution is one of the necessary process for liberal democracy to actually be achieved.
Well, let me just make my final statement here. I mean, I think as you're talking, and I appreciate you provoking such insightful discussion and thoughts in my case, at least, that the real test is, I mean, sure, you have provinces here. Let's take South Korea. You're all South Koreans. South Korea is a very centralized society, a very centralized government. Now, sure, you elect your governors, but the governors, the provinces do not have the autonomous right to raise taxes. I think that's the critical criterion. Can a regional government or a local government have the independent right to raise and lower the taxes on people, to raise funds for the regional or local government? And they can't do that in Korea. The money comes from the central government and is given to the provinces, and the provinces have some leeway in deciding how to spend it. But if the people that control the money are the ones that have the ultimate authority, and they will probably complain, and they can just hold on to the money if the regional government is not acting in the way that they want. The provinces are like elected technocrats. They follow the orders. They are going to follow the orders coming out of Seoul or Paris, right? And if they don't follow the orders coming out of Seoul, they're going to be fired, because those governors are appointed, right, by the central government, and they do not have their own autonomous capability of raising taxes. In the United States, you can the local state, the states. They can decide on their own that I have to pay more money from my salary into the state of Ohio government budget, or lower it. And it's true also at a local level among the cities and so on. And that's the critical point, because when we're talking about money, then we're talking about difficult choices, right? If you have the power to raise taxes and make people pay more money and force them. So if you don't pay your taxes, you're going to get in trouble. The police are going to find you, because you have to pay your taxes to the state of Ohio or the city of Cleveland, that Cleveland, the city of Cleveland, the state of Ohio decided. If you don't, you're going to be punished. You're going to be put in jail. I mean, that means we're talking about conflicts. We're talking about critical, difficult choices. And that's what life and development is all about, right? That we don't get everything we want. We have to choose. And when we choose one thing, we sacrifice something else. It's always the case. If we want to go to college, we got to spend the money. We got to spend the money in tuition. It's a lot of money. For example, so I think that's the critical aspect. We talk about devolution. Do you have the ability to raise independently your own taxes on the region that you govern as a governing entity? And, so anyway, that's my concluding point. What is your concluding point? Chung Min-ju?
Yeah, there might be some issues that absolutely local governments do not have as much as power as the central government. But I believe that, as I keep saying, it is one of the important elements, because they are the actors where the separation of powers can actually happen from the central government, and they are the connector of the local people to the central government, and by that, it will be more helpful for the local people to actually participate in politics, and also they can have their own rights to actually form a regional, I guess, political views, so that and express that more efficiently to the central government to achieve policies or other political issues that benefits them. So based on this, I believe that devolution is one of the important process to happen in order for liberal democracy to actually be achieved in reality.
Okay, we have time for one question. Anybody want to ask a question? And I don't hear anyone seeking or chatting a question. So if not, then we will go to the survey votes, and we'll look here. So who won the debate? So please vote as to who won the debate. And let me make sure I share screen so you can all see that. And there you see. So please vote on who won the debate, pro or con. Oh no. It was a good debate though. I mean, I like that. Oh, so 7 people were signed up. I guess that includes me. So we won't take too much more time here. Okay. So that's it there. So I'm sorry, Minju. I mean, I was just arguing con because I was assigned it. I didn't necessarily believe it myself. But, you know, these are complicated questions, right? Complex issues. And so there's no right or wrong answer. And then the next question is, and this is anonymous, grade the debate. Please grade the debate. So that's 5 people. I think we have room for 1 more student, and then to make it 6. And well, okay. I think that's everybody. Okay. Well, I guess we'll just wait 10 more seconds. And okay, well, thank you very much. And I will post the recording on Cyber Campus. Anything else? If not, I will stop share and see you in class on Monday. Bye.
See you Monday.